warn the Gol Adam, tell him don't touch him, and he violates the warning, the Gol Adam can get killed for it. The Gol Adam can get killed for it, not just if the Gol Adam goes into the city of refuge and goes in and he kills him in the city of refuge, which we know he would be subject to death, the Gol Adam, for going in and violating. He has no right to go in there. But even if the Gol Adam does not go in there, right after the murder takes place, the Gol Adam runs after the guy and kills him, or the guy goes to court and after the court, they bring him to court and the court made a decision, he has to go to exile. If at that point the Gol Adam kills him, do we kill the Gol Adam for that? That is the question in the Gemara. Yesterday's Gemara. And we had two opinions. Right, so Patur is the opinion that he will not, that even though the Gol Adam should not have killed him, but the Gol Adam will not get killed, he's Patur. He's exempt from getting killed. That's Afuna. How come? So I think the Meshech Chochmah, he explains that perhaps his approach is, the Torah says, Ki yecham levavo. The Gol Adam is very hot. He's very angry. He's very depressed about what happened to his situation. And perhaps under such a circumstance, he's not in his right mind. So even though he's supposed to control himself, and even though he's not allowed to do it, if he went ahead and he did it, we're not going to, the Torah is not going to, court will not kill a person under such a circumstance, even though he did something very terrible. That's how he explains it. He says it's like, in a certain sense, it's like an ones. It's like a person to kill somebody, the person has to be in his right mind. If a person's retarded and he kills somebody, do we kill the retarded person? No. The retarded person is retarded. That could be, that's how he suggests the reason why it would be patur. Sometimes in life, you do something wrong, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the court down here will always impose a punishment. Like a person, groma b'nizakin, a person causes damage. Patur midei adam v'chayim b'dinei shemayim. So here it says patur. It doesn't say mutaz. Patur. He's patur. The court won't kill him, and it's based on the pasuk that says v'lo ein mishpat movet. The pasuk says about the Gol Adam, v'lo ein mishpat movet. There's no judgment of death against him. So there's a question: who was the v'lo ein mishpat movet? Referred to the Gol Adam as he will not get killed if he kills, and therefore prepare the road for the guy who killed unintentionally. Make sure that he gets there fast, because the Gol Adam does not have the deterrent of murdering him, because if he murders him, he will not get killed for such an act. That's one way to learn. The whole question yesterday's Gemara is, what does mean v'lo to him ein mishpat mavet? Is referring to the Gol Adam will not get killed if he kills him, or v'lo ein mishpat mavet is going on the original Rotzeach, the one who killed unintentionally. V'lo him ein mishpat mavet. He's not the servant of death. It's going to Galut. He's not the servant of death. So, if that's the case, then if that's the case, but the Gol Adam, if the Gol Adam would kill him, the Gol Adam will be worthy of death. So that is if you see, we need a pasuk to exempt the Gol Adam from if he kills him, that the Gol Adam won't get killed. How do we know the Gol Adam won't get killed? This guy killed unintentionally. The law is, when a guy kills unintentionally, he's not obligated to death. So how could so you need a pasuk to tell me a chidush? What's the big chidush, Mr. Safi? The chidush is that the Gol Adam would be able to get away with murder, so to speak, because no one ever gets away with anything. I mean, at least at the courts down here would. Now, how would you know that? If you interpret the pasuk of v'lo ein mishpat mavet referring to the Gol Adam, that was the discussion yesterday. So Rav Huna understands. That's what the Gemara said yesterday. Ksav v'lo ein mishpat mavet is referring to the Gol Adam. The Meisivei was that there's another opinion that says v'lo ein mishpat mavet is referring to the Rotzeach, the original guy. What did you say? Wait, so the pasuk is saying The pasuk says, we don't want the Gol Hadam to run after the Rotzeach. Prepare the road. Make signs. Make it easy for the one who committed the murder unintentionally to go to run there, because we don't want, because we're afraid that the Gol Hadam might come and kill him. And really, he's not below a mishba movet. This guy is not deserving of death. He's not deserving of death. But if the other guy goes there, but it's not telling us that the Gol Hadam will be off the hook. It's not telling us that the Gol Hadam will be off the hook if the Gol Hadam kills him. So that was the yesterday's discussion. And now today we're going to continue, by the way. The Gemara is continuing. Good morning, Dr. David. The Gemara
Good morning.
On this journey of trying to understand what the law would be in such a case. If the Gol Hadam would kill the Rotzeach, the one who killed unintentionally, if the Gol Hadam, if the relative would kill him on his way to the Ari Miklat, would the Gol Hadam be subject to be killed himself, executed by the court for killing him at that point? If he goes into exile and he steps out of the court, he violates his sentencing, terms of his sentencing. The terms of the sentencing is he has to remain in the Ari Miklat, in the place of refuge, and he violates that. Then the Gol Hadam, there's a Mishnah later on, two opinions in the Mishnah. One opinion, the Gol Hadam has a right to kill him. One opinion, the Gol Hadam has a mitzvah to kill him. Two opinions. There's two opinions in the Mishnah later on. That's not the halacha. Halacha, he has a right to kill him. What? You're saying it's not chayim, but remember, he is obligated to be in the exile. We always never forget the Rambam's explanation that the shogeg of the Torah that he goes to exile is there was some level of negligence, small level. He could have prevented the death. So therefore, maybe with all of that together with the cholent, that he could have prevented the death, and he was supposed to be in the exile. What? Okay, he's not following his. Okay, good point. Okay, we'll have to see that Mishnah. We'll get this. We're going to get there. And Morris is here, so now we're ready to roll. Okay. So the Gemara says the following. We're on Tanan, exactly. Mosrin lo shnei tamid chachamim. We are on Yudam base. And the art scroll was probably, it's Yudam base, I would guess 3. Maybe it's 2. Tanan. The Gemara is going to bring from one of the Mishnayot as a. We just turned the page. 10b3 Tanan. Right? Tanan. So we learned in the Mishnah. What we learned, got it, Morris? 10b3 Tanan, top left corner. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Mosrin lo Shnei Talmidei Chachamim. We give the person who killed unintentionally, we give him 2 Torah scholars. We give over to him 2 Torah scholars to escort him to the Ari Miklat. Morning, Yosef Atzadik. So, morning, good to see you. So we give him 2 Talmidei Chachamim that will escort the one who killed unintentionally to the Ari Miklat. By the way, Morris this week's parasha discusses Ari Miklat. Now, and what's the reason for this? Why do we give him 2 Torah scholars? Because Shema Yargenu B'derech. We're afraid that the Gol Hadam, that close relative, might want to kill him on the road to exile. And therefore, we don't want that to happen. We don't want the guy to get killed. So therefore, we send with him 2 Talmidei Chachamim, v'yidabru elav. And what will these 2 Torah scholars do? They will speak to the Gol Hadam. Now, yes, they're escorting the Rotzeach. They're escorting the guy who killed unintentionally. Let's say they had the court, and the court gave a verdict. It's chayev galut. He has to go to exile. So now he's going. So the court will also send with him. There'll be 2 Torah scholars at the court, waiting to be ready to roll, to go and escort this Rotzeach. So you had a question on that, Mr. Safdie? Now the Gol Adam might come. We don't know where he is. He might be in the court. He might be waiting outside. He pops up. The 2 Torah scholars will talk to him. Now the question is, what are they going to say to him? So Mr. said they're going to say Musa. They're going to say, don't touch him. Leave him alone. He's not deserving of death. He's not a real murderer. That's because you already was privy to this Gemara. But this Mishnah. But the Gemara is suggesting that perhaps, you know what they're going to say to him? They're going to warn him. And they're going to say, don't kill. Because if you kill this guy, the Gol Adam, is going to get killed for this act. So that's what the Gemara, in its question, or trying to bring a proof to one of the opinions, is by understanding, the Gemara is understanding the Mishnah that says that you send along with him 2 Torah scholars. What's the point of the 2 Torah scholars? Most probably to warn the Gol Adam. So the Gemara says, my love, the Matube, most probably, but they're telling the Gol Adam, they're telling him, they're warning him. They're telling him that if you kill this guy, you are going to get killed. So that's most probably what they're telling him. My love, the Matube, they warn him, the Ikato, if you kill him, Bakatalahu, you, the Gol Adam, will get killed to the court. Yeah, but the truth, he is hot. You know what? You got to calm people down. And if he's hot, he has to wake up to reality. Good morning, everybody. And that's so maybe that we got to give him that warning. When a person is warned, they sometimes they pull back. They're warned. They know the stakes are high. As hot as they are, it's like a guy. The wife warns the husband. The guy's upset about something, but she says, if you do such and such a thing, you should know. You're causing a lot of. You're making going to be a lot of trouble as a result of your act. What? It's gonna be it's gonna be consequences. You might be angry, but don't do that move. That's a bad move. There's gonna be consequences. Okay, you pull back. So that's the warning to the Gol Adam. So the Gemara says, "Lo." That is not the purpose of the speech. That which we said that the Torah scholars are going to talk to the guy. It's not the hair to warn the guy. You hear what Mr. Safdie said. They're going to tell him words of Musa to discourage him from touching him. Kidatanya, as we have in the Braita, as the Braita's job is to explain the Mishnah. That's many times that's what the Braita elaborates on the Mishnah. What does the Braita say? The Braita says, "Vidabru elav dvarim haruyim lo." They should speak to the Gol Adam words that are appropriate, that he will accept. Omrim lo. They say to the Gol Adam, Al tinhag bo minhag shofchit damim. Don't treat this guy like a murderer, like a guy who pours out people's blood. This happened unintentionally. And therefore, since it happened unintentionally, you should take it easy. You should take it easy on the guy and don't touch him. And why do we need 2 Torah scholars? Why isn't 1 Torah scholar enough? We find in the Midrash that an Adam Chashuv, someone who's a very important person, he should not go out with less than 2 people. He needs to have 2 people escorting him when he travels. Why? Rashi says, Bereshit, based on the Gemara, that in case one needs the bathroom, the other one is always there. So too over here also. We need two Torah scholars to escort him. If one of the Torah scholars needs the bathroom, the other Torah scholar will be there to talk to the Goel Adam. What do you say? It's not right. It's not about warning. This is meaning it's not about warning him. Meaning if you hold that it's warning him, you'll need two witnesses on the warning. If there was two witnesses on the warning, therefore you need two Torah scholars, you need two people. But if you and also there'll be two Torah people, they'll be warning him and they'll be available to be witnesses on the murder. If the reason is to warn him, so now you understand why you need two people, because they will serve as warning him and they'll serve as witnesses. But if the point is not because that they have the ability to kill the guy for killing him, it's not about they're coming as possible witnesses or to warn the guy. So there's a different reason why we need Torah scholars. And also, it's an interesting idea. The Orach Haner says, since they themselves are Torah scholars, they shouldn't go out without two people together. Because the Torah scholar is supposed to be accompanied by two people. At least you're accompanied with another Torah scholar. Okay. That is the first opinion of the Brighton. Rameya Omer. Rameya says he disagrees with the Tanna Kama. The Tanna Kama says the only one that's talking, the one who is talking to the Goel Adam is the Torah scholars. He doesn't talk about the murderer himself saying anything. The guy who killed this relative unintentionally, he doesn't say that he says anything. He says the only one that's doing the talking is the Torah scholars. However, comes Rameya, and there's two different texts in Rameya. One text is Af. Also he speaks, meaning in addition to the Torah scholar speaking, he himself should also say something. The one who killed unintentionally. And he should, probably, what should he say? He'd say, I didn't mean it. It was unintentional. That's one approach. And the other text says that doesn't say af, doesn't say also. It says he speaks, meaning there's no need for the Torah scholars to speak, to say don't treat him like a murderer. Rather, he himself will tell him, I didn't do it intentionally. So please don't kill. I'm not deserving. He says I'm not deserving of. It's an unintentional murder. So there's two understandings of what Rameya is saying. Rameya, who the text that we have in the Gemara here doesn't say af. We just said who medaber al yidei atzmo. He talks for himself. He's the one who does the talking for himself. Shenema, and where did he get this from? That he does the talking for himself. V'zeh dvar harotzeach. The Torah uses the word v'zeh dvar harotzeach. Why does the Torah use it? This is the dvar harotzeach. You know, because the pasuk could have said, you know, v'zeh mishpat harotzeach, the law, the judgment, or dvar uses the word dvar is the root of speech. That the Rotzeach, the one who killed unintentionally, he needs to speak up. Zed Varotzeach. Now, the Gemara says, very good. So that's what the Chacham are going to say back. Amrulo, the Chachamim say, Harbe shlichot oseh. Many things can't do by yourself. Many things are only accomplished through a third party. And since many things are only accomplished by a third party, so like Mr. Safdie said, you know, he might, the guy might not doesn't want to hear from this guy. And therefore, it's better that he himself should not speak up Rather, we should insist and have the Torah scholars speak up on his behalf. Even though we have a concept, mitzvah bo yoten b'shlucho. There's a general concept. When you have a mitzvah to do, who should do it? You should do it, or should you appoint an agent to represent you? The law is you do it yourself. It's a greater reward. The more you get your hands dirty, the more you're involved in the mitzvah, much greater than having someone else represent you do a mitzvah. But that's only talking about when the mitzvah could be accomplished by you or by your agent, so you should do it yourself. But if you can't accomplish the mitzvah yourself, then of course you should have an agent do it on your behalf. So that's the story over here. What needs to be accomplished here is the calm, the hot-headedness of the Gol Hadam. And if the way to do it is by having someone else talk on your behalf, that's the way to go. So that's what the Gemara says. And Rashi says, things that are not done by the person, that are not done by a person are accepted by agents. That meaning to say, this idea, which seems that Rashi is saying this idea that sometimes it's the agents that will be more affected than the person himself. Okay, Amama. Now the Gemara is now going back on what the Torah scholars say to the Gol Hadam. What did they say? Amamar is like the master said. Like we're going back. Now we're analyzing a quote that we just quoted. Amamar. Shkaga bo ma'aseh liyado. They tell him that this thing happened unintentionally. So the Gemara said, why does the Talmid HaChachamim have to tell the Gol Hadam was looking to kill? By the way, this was done unintentionally. If the guy is running to exile, where is he running? He's running to exile. You run to exile, for what's the case that you run to exile? He killed unintentionally. Okay, so, but if you know you're on where's the guy running to? I have to catch him. The Gol Hadam has to catch him. Why does he have to catch him? Wants to get him before he gets to exile. He knows he's running to exile. If you're running to exile, people only run to exile for what? For unintentional murder. Shita, the even mezud bargolatu. The even mezud bargolatu. If he did it b'mezid, is he going to go to exile? If he's going to exile, so obviously it was unintentionally. So why do they need to say? They could have just said, don't treat him like a murderer. And it's obvious. Why should you treat him like a murderer? Because it happened unintentional. So why do they need to say to him it happened unintentional? So the Gemara says, there is a need, because there are people that go to exile if they killed intentionally as well. We're going to see there's a Mishnah. And the Gemara is going to bring the Braita. Tosfos is going to ask why does the Gemara bring the Mishnah? But here, look how the Gemara brings the Braita. Well, Tanya, we learned to the Braita. This is how we see that sometimes there's not only the people that kill unintentionally go to exile, everybody goes to exile. According to one opinion, everyone needs to run to exile. One opinion is that everyone needs to run to exile, and one opinion is that many people go to exile. They're not obligated, but we're going to see now there is an opinion in the Braita that says there's a mitzvah for everybody to go to exile, whether the people killed intentionally or unintentionally. We'll see that in a minute. For Tanya, and we'll see what type of intention we're talking about. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yosef says, "B'tchila, in the beginning, Echad shogeg, echad mezid, magdimim l'orim miklat. They run to the orim miklat. Everybody runs, like the pasuk says. There's a pasuk that says, if a person hates his friend and he ambushed him and he killed him, and he runs to one of these cities. This is before the Bez of Pascha. Everybody's running to the Arim Miklat. And what happens? Everybody runs there. And Bezdin Sholchim, and Bezdin goes ahead and they send. Now, I saw one of the commentaries say, if a guy killed with witnesses and was warned, we lock him up. We lock him up. The guy, we have witnesses and he killed with witnesses and he was warned, we're gonna lock him. We're not gonna let him roam around the exile. Even we're not gonna tell him he runs to exile. He needs to be locked up. But the guy who, let's say, was grossly negligent, and let's say the guy, there was no warning, he killed and there was no warning. That guy, maybe he's running to exile, or a grossly negligent case when a person killed with great negligence. So that's where the case is. What will happen is that everybody's running to exile, and maybe he thinks that because he wasn't warned, thinks he'll go to exile, and he thinks that's his place to stay. Because the Bezdin is not going to kill him, the court's not going to kill him if he killed without a warning. The court's not going to kill him if he was overly negligent in some case, but he didn't. Let's say he didn't intend to kill the guy, but he was overly negligent. So the court's not going to kill him. So he thinks that where's his place to go? His place to go is to go to exile. So what do we say over here? So we say b'tchila in the beginning, echad with echad mezid, echad shogeg, echad mezid, magdim al-orim miklat. They run to the orim miklat. So the way the Ritva says, what does that mean? Someone who killed, it was like I explained, without intentionally, without warning, or someone who was a close to an shogeg karav lemezid. That means it was unintentional, but it was close to intentional, so to speak. But if someone who kills with intentionally with warning, the Gemara says that head, we can lock him up. And so what do we do now? So these guys ran to exile. He wasn't warned, like he said, and he ran to exile, but he murdered, intentional murder. Nobody warned him. What happened was cold blood. Takes out a gun, boom, takes out a knife, sword, he kills the guy in front of people. He wasn't warned. He's running to exile. Everyone needs to run to exile. That's the first halacha. The Torah wants the guy to run to exile, according to the first opinion. And the Goel Adam might not know what happened. He might not know whether it was done intentionally or unintentionally. So that's why the Talmid HaChachamim have to say to the guy killed unintentionally. Meaning he's not the guy who killed intentionally but didn't have warning. So what do? So they first everyone needs to run to exile. Meaning most probably, according to this understanding, we need, under all circumstances, the person kills, run to exile, and then you're gonna be in exile, and then the court will work it out. That's how you need to do. So therefore, first is a mitzvah to run to exile. Mi bezdin sholchin u'meviin otam misham. And then the courts will go ahead and send a messenger and say, we got to bring these guys, the guy who ran to exile, we're going to bring him to court. And the court is going to decide whether he needs to remain in exile or not. So, the the one who was obligated death, now let's say there was witnesses and there was warning. Yes. Yes. Say it again. He ran to exile before the court had proceedings. Yes. And then the court's going to have a court case about it. They got to bring him to court. I would think they can force him to come to court. Yes, they should be able to force him to come to court. We're talking about when the Jewish community had power, they could force him to come to court. Meaning the relative can't come into the exile to kill the guy, but the court will send a court officer. You have to come to court. They're just like today, what happens in prison? The guy doesn't want to come to court. I don't think there's such a possibility of a guy not not come to court. Whatever, but I don't know what they do to the guy today, but he has to come to court.
But he becomes
Morning. The 7:30 menu will be upstairs. We're going to be here till 7:25.
It comes back the relatives of the person, whether they want somebody to get fired for the person.
Right. So really, the relative should really not kill. You should not kill him at that point. The only question is, if the relative would kill him at that point, would the relative be subject to getting death for that? But really, he should not kill him. The guy's going from the court, from exile to the court. He shouldn't really kill him, because first of all, he might not be deserving of exile at all. Maybe it's a total accident. He doesn't even know. The relative doesn't know why the guy is in exile. Yeah. The court has to make a decision. That's what the Gemara is going to say right now. The court's going to make a decision. There's going to be three possible decisions of the court. Possibility number one is the court will say he's obligated death. And Misha's Chaymita Harguhu. If let's say he ran to exile, and let's say there were witnesses, let's say the court didn't lock him up yet. The court didn't get it. He ran to exile, and he had killed intentionally with a warning. So the court will bring him out of the exile, and they will kill him. Shenema, v'sholchu zikni iro, the elders of the city, meaning the rabbi, the Torah scholars, the Sanhedrin, v'lokhu oto misham, they will take the guy who ran there, v'natnu oto biyad gol adam, they will give him over in the hand of the gol adam. So now here is the question. When the Torah says you would give him over in the hand of the gol adam, the close relative, to kill him, does it mean literally that the relative is the one who's going to kill him? Or does it mean that it's like the relative is killing him because this is what he's been trying to do. This is what he wants to happen. So the Meiri says, some explain that the Bezdin are the ones that kill the person. Even though it says you give him over in the hands of the relative, it doesn't mean literally. It just means that the court, by killing him, will be fulfilling the will of the relative. However, other commentators explain that, like the simple reading of the pasuk, the Bezdin will give him in the hands of the Gol Adam to kill him. That even the guy who is judged in the court, the guy who's judged in the court, and he's obligated death, is a mitzvah to the Gol Hadam to kill him, to be the one. Like sometimes we find halacha, sometimes it says about the witnesses being the ones who are involved in the Yad Heidim Tiyabo B'Rishon Alamito. Sometimes in the Skila and certain things we find that the witnesses who testify against the guy are part of the people who are part of the punishment of the guy. So here there are those that say there's a mitzvah for the relative himself to be the one to actually kill the guy. But if he doesn't want to, or he wasn't there at that time, then the Bezin themselves will kill him with the sword. But what's the punishment for somebody who committed murder? Is hereg. He gets murdered by the sword. So if the Goel Hadam is there, if the relative is there, he's the one who will go ahead and do that the mitzvah. By the way, it's a mitzvah on the court to judge, to mete out the punishments. It's one of the mitzvot. That's the responsibility of the court. Might not be pretty, but it's one of the mitzvot of the court. And some say that the relative actually will do it. Okay, so that's the first guy. The second guy, Mishalon Eschayev Mita, someone who is not obligated death, patru. They will send them back home. Meaning to say, if a guy is not obligated death, and let's say it was a total accident, they'll send them home. Because if it was a total accident, meaning it wasn't, we said this, if only when there's a small negligence would the guy go to exile. I mean, you could have prevented it. You went down a ladder and you weren't careful going down the ladder. You could have been more careful. So you fell on the guy, you killed the guy on the bottom of the ladder, you go to exile. But in the case when you were going up the ladder and you fell, or something that was, I gave the example, if someone's driving normal 50 miles an hour on a highway and the guy runs in front of the car at night, there's no way you could see him. The guy who killed him by accident does not have to go to exile. There was nothing that he could have done better. It said you save him from the hand of the Goel Hadam. You save him if the guy is exempt from murder. You have to save him. He goes back home. But a mishen es chayev galut, someone who's obligated exile, machzirin oto lemkomo. We send back the guy to exile. He ran to exile right when he committed the murder. We brought him to court. If we decided that he deserved of exile, we send him back, go back to exile, wait there until the Kohen Gadol passes away. Shenema, they return him. He goes back to his Arei Miklat. Now,
Rabbi,
yes.
do you want maybe to use the last couple minutes for talking about Rosh Chodesh Av and what's the limitation and everything?
So maybe tomorrow we'll do a little bit more about that. Yosef, we're going to finish the Gemara, but remember tonight's Rosh Chodesh Av, everybody. And you should know this just regarding Sfardim. You have to know what the minhag in your Sephardic community is. Some Sfardim actually will have meat on Rosh Chodesh, and some don't. The rest of the days they don't have meat. Mr. Safti, do you know what your minhag of your community? You think Rosh Chodesh Av? You think they do have meat? Ashkenazim will not have meat from Rosh Chodesh. From the first, we include Rosh Chodesh in the restrictions of the meat and so on. But the Sfardim, many will make an allowance. Okay, we're going upstairs for the minyan. Thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed. We're here Monday through Friday at 6:45. We have the class.
But also on Shabbat there is allowed meat, right?
Shabbat you can have meat, and no restrictions of meat on Shabbat.
And this Tisha B'Av fall on Friday night, so we're going to move it to Sunday, right?
Correct. The fast will be next Sunday. Correct.
So we're allowed to meet on that Shabbat, right?
Correct. Next Shabbat you can have meat also. Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. We have to be careful. Like before Shabbat, people like to taste the food. You have to be careful. Let's say next for Sfardim, who allow to eat on Rosh Chodesh meat, but next Friday is going to be Erev Shabbat. You have to be careful not to taste the meat before Shabbat.
What if the meat cooked in something? You can taste the sauce, not the meat itself.
Oh, that's a good question. I have to look up. That's a good question, Yosef. If you're testing it for the purpose of seeing if it tastes good, but you're not eating it for the purpose of eating the meat. Let's say you want to actually taste the meat because you're making it for the Shabbat, and you need to test it because you need to know if it's good or not.
No, just the pot. Do you know if the seasoning is correct? You know.
Right. I'm saying that. I should look that up because there you're not eating it for the sake of eating it. You're just for tasting it to know that it's good. I'll try to look it up. You remind me, okay, Yosef?
Yeah, and again, it's you don't eat the meat. You eat, let's say, the cabbage or the zucchini from the same part that the meat is exist. You know.
I don't, you might not, if it has the flavor, and we Ashkenaz, I don't know why this far, then we Ashkenazim, it has the flavor of meat, we also wouldn't, if it was cooked with the meat together, has the
Oh.
flavor of the meat, we wouldn't eat it during the 9 days.
No, I'm saying forget about the 9 days. I'm talking about before Shabbat.
Oh, before Shabbat. Okay, before Shabbat, we'll have to see, listen, if it's before Shabbat and you want to eat the kugel.
No, flavor just for to test the flavor, you know.
I'm saying if they taste the flavor, we'll look that up because it could be there's room to, it might be more lenient by tasting the flavor, but you're not intentionally eating it for the purpose of eating. Well, I'll get back to you on that. Remind me, all right, Yosef?
Okay, Rabbi.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good day also. And Rosh Chodesh.
Chodesh Tov. Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Right, the better question is,